units, emergency. Officer in danger, Acer Plaza. Repeat, Acer Plaza, all units.
They were all dead. The final gunshot was an exclamation mark to everything that had led to this point. I released my finger from the trigger, and then it was over.
The neo-noir genre is one of those styles that can present to you a story and a world in which the hero, most of the time, is affected by an inner conflict and is set to take a path of violence and revenge in order to find its closure or to do what is right. Compared with the original film noir, a genre that appeared in the 1930s and presented thriller stories in a shadowy cinematographic style, the neo-noir adds this concept of a lone warrior set on a quest of revenge, becoming a so-called vigilante, a man who takes justice in his own hands, who is motivated by personal motives, and who doesn't stop until his mission is completed. On a film basis, there are some titles that come into my mind, like Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, Sin City, V for Vendetta, Ringo Lam's City of Fire, Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs. There are way too many neo-noir titles out there. But if I'm gonna talk about video games, one of the main titles that comes into my mind in an instant is Max Payne. Max Payne is one of those titles and games that are so simple but have a powerful impact on the ones who play the game. Released back in 2001, the game tells you the story of a cop who is set on a personal vendetta to avenge his family's murder, while he tries to deal with a case related to drug lords, mobsters and company conspiracies to unfold the truth behind a mysterious drug called Valkyr. The game puts you into the shoes of Max and presents to you the story in a unique way. It unveils a ton of action and makes you want to play the story to discover what is really going on and how everything will unveil into Max's path. As I said, the story is very simple. Actually, is a basic concept for a story like this. A cop thrown into all those twists of life and villainous acts who has to deal with everything to uncover all the reasons why everything happened to him. A classic, simple, basic story. But the way this story unfolds in front of the player is in a way that I have to say it's more than perfect. From the beginning of the game you have this shot who reveals the city of New York. You could see the cold, untamed winter that is out there. You hear the police radio station and the emergencies they are talking about. You see helicopters and police cars who are gathering around a tall building, and on the rooftop of that building, Max Payne himself is waiting for them. It is a nice method to enter in a story full of mystery, to unravel a world of conflict and a world of vengeance. But this shot, this cinematic introduction of the story is just the beginning. The game continues to tell you the story through the help of graphic novel panels, narrated by Max himself, in a rhythm that will make you feel Max's pain, no pun intended, but also to introduce you into the vibe of the story. Somehow it gives you a feeling that you are reading a graphic novel like Watchmen or Sin City. You know, a novel with a powerful and important message to tell to the reader. And during the gameplay, while you play the game or reach different moments of the story, Max is narrating, giving more details about the villains or the feelings that Max has in that moment. There are places where you can interact with different elements and discover more details, like Max is searching for clues. There is a nice combination between cinematic action and graphic novel panels that give you a certain dynamism to the story. And the story being separated in 3 chapters, giving to each step of Max a powerful importance to reveal everything in a more logical and ascending way, makes you as a player to realize that everything is bigger than you know, that everything you try to unravel has a more meaning than it seems. It's like every chapter is dealing with a part of the evil that ended the life of Max's family. In every way you want to see, it is a very smart method from the point of view of narrativity. According to the story, Max's family was murdered by some junkies who broke in his house. So naturally, the first chapter of the story is dealing with the mystery of the drug that is this MacGuffin of the game. While he is on the run from the police, Max is dealing with the lower class of the criminal underworld, with those who are in the streets. Step by step, he is realizing that the ones who orchestrated his pain and are behind the drug have strings in a higher class. So like that, chapter 2 is dealing with the mob part of the underworld. Max is somehow caught in the middle of a mob war and has to ally with Vladimir Lem and his Russian mobsters in order to achieve his goal. When he is so close of getting the information, a higher power, a corporation dealing with secret military projects, enters in the scheme and tries to stop Payne. Realizing that the corporation is behind everything, the drug, the mobsters, his family's death, Chapter 3 starts and Max has to deal with the leader of the corporation, finally ending all the nightmare and finally getting his revenge. This evolution in the hierarchic ladder of the villains is also made with a smooth touch. It makes you think that the story behind everything is simple, that the villain is from the streets, giving you a feeling of anarchy in a way. But with every step Max is making, he realizes that everything is connected with something bigger, making you go deep into the story and realizing that somehow, in a way, everything is connected, just like in a conspiracy. In a funny way, somehow, this game reminded me a little bit about The Punisher. Ironically, later, a Punisher game was released, and that game gives you similar vibes regarding the gameplay of Max Payne. I love the way the story is made, I love the presentation of the main character, of how it is made and designed, I love the concept of the noir genre that can be found at every single pixel of the game, and I love the way the game presents the concept of femme fatale through the character of Mona Sachs. It presents the basic concept from the noir genre, but it is more direct and yet so simple. You don't get many details about her. She shows in the game for like 2 or 3 times and then she vanishes. The interesting part is that every time she appears, Max gets in trouble. Well, more trouble than he already is. But when she shows up, you can feel that she is like an equal of Max, but in reverse. It's like a mirror version of him. You can see the tension between the two, you can sense that something is going on, that there is an attraction. And the use of different elements and hints towards the Nordic mythology, like the whole game takes place during a powerful snowstorm, being a reference to the Fimbulwinter, and the first boss is defeated in a location, a bar called Ragnarok, or the drug that is called Valkyr, giving the idea that it will take you to heavens. The symbolism behind the story is so great, it is smooth, it is like the story was made around it. It's like the story is telling you that Max's whole actions are made like there is an end of the world, an end of the evil world, end of the evil from Max's life. I've got to tell you, Sam Lake, the guy who created Max Payne, he knew how to put those things on the table. He knew how to create this entire universe with small and simple details. The guy is a genius, I love his work. But I don't need to tell myself that he's a genius, because you can see that from the way he conceived not only the story as a whole thing, but 2 certain levels where you can totally experience Max's trauma in a scary and challenging way at the same time. And I'm talking about the nightmare levels, where you have to walk in a maze of corridors and to follow a stain of blood in order to reach the end goal of the level. What is so interesting in those levels is how the player can experience them, because there is only one thing that can guide you through those levels, and that is the sound, the voices of Max's wife and the babies crying. And the walk on the bloodline is a catchy one, because if you step a little bit to your left or your right, you're done. If you don't listen where the sound is coming from, you are lost. The levels are a bit weird, but they are making perfect sense overall into the story. They are making you feel Max is more personal, more close to you, and you can realize how his trauma is consuming him and how it does fuel him to continue into the story. With these surrealist levels, the game has a new special thing to add to it, to remember it. There is a thing that I have to mention, and that is the side part of the story, or more accurately to say, the trigger of this vendetta rampage of Max Payne, and that is the death of his partner, Alex, at the beginning of the game. Alex's death is somehow the thing that makes him unravel the truth in his way. According to the story, Alex was the one man who was near Max after his family died. He was the one pillar of sanity in Max's life. So logically, in a psychological way if I could say, Max starting his revenge quest after his death is a perfect way to begin the story. Sure, the entire plot of the game is based on his loss of family, which is okay from a certain point of view because that's what motivates him, but somehow as the game progresses you kinda forget about his partner and the whole motivation is taken by Max's trauma. I mean, the game didn't forget about Alex because the police are after Max for this reason. They think that Max went rogue and killed Alex, but I think that is okay, I guess, as long as the motivation of the character is well defined. The simplicity of the game is not present only in the concept of the story, but also in the concept of the gameplay and the game design, because the main purpose of the game is to cross from point A to point B in a level and you have to shoot enemies. This type of gameplay is a classic method. Technically every single shooter is based on this type of gameplay. But being a third-person game, it has a special feeling, it adds you to the story in a more unique way, and having the bullet time, that awesome ability when time slows down and you can shoot your enemies and avoid their bullets, it adds more to the feeling. It makes you feel that you control a character with no fear, with no remorse, who throws himself in the middle of the action without hesitation. And yes, I know that the bullet time was made famous by the Matrix film, but when it comes to video games, I think that Max Payne was the first game to add it. Funny enough, it matches perfectly with the game and with the story. And speaking of how the story is merged perfectly with the gameplay, I noticed something after I have completed the game. In the first chapter of the game you fight with the low-class villains of the town, and as the story progresses the game gives you mobsters or security agents, secret agents to fight with. And this crescendo is presented not only in the way the villains are changing, but the way you obtain weapons to help in battle and with the locations as well. I mean, leaving the prologue behind where the background story of Max is shown, you start the game in the subway station. From there you walk through tunnels, abandoned stations, then you go up on the streets and abandoned hotels, closed bars, mob mansions and corporate buildings. The environment evolves with the story and so does the player. He starts from the underground with little to none information and then ends the game on a skyscraper after he stopped the main villain and found out everything. I honestly love this ascension. It is smooth, it is unrecognizable only if you think about it. And yes, I know that I talked about this earlier regarding the way the story evolves and it is logical to change the views when you reach new heights, but I love this evolution on all the levels of creation. This is what I like to see in the stories, in movies and games, this subtle story building and evolution of a world and a character. Even after 20 years after its release, Max Payne is one of those games that have to be played. I mean, okay, the graphics are not what's so common today, you know, smooth graphics, realistic ones. They are edgy, they are unpolished for today's standards. But that's fine, it doesn't matter that much. After you are playing it, there is something that will stick with you for a long time when you're gonna think about it, and that's not the story or the bullet time effect. Well, there are, but it's not the first one. The first thing that comes into my mind when I think about it is the music. That iconic theme made from simple notes sung at a piano. A sad, calm tune that grows and grows in intensity as long as you are hearing it. From the moment you open the game and you enter into the main menu and you hear that song, you automatically feel what is really about the story. You feel the theme behind it, you feel that something serious is gonna unravel in front of your eyes. The game tells you what it's about without starting a new game. I know that in a movie the first shot of it is very important because it will give you the feeling and the rhythm of the film, but apparently this is what applies for the video games too, except that a game doesn't start from the moment you press the new game button. It starts from the main menu. And in this case, with a simple tune, the game gives you the rhythm and the theme of the game, and all you have to do is just to play it and unravel its story. Thinking about the game more and more, I found it more fascinating than I originally thought it would be. In its simplicity, the game gives you so much and creates an incredible atmosphere for the player to feel like you are a part of that world. I mean, from a narrative point of view, it's super interesting to have a backstory of what is happening in the city, the consequences of what you have done. And it is a nice touch that you can interact from time to time with the radio or with the TV to hear what is happening out there. Another thing that is interesting, but I don't think it's a good idea, at least not to me, was the way the difficulties of the game are unlocked. Because initially the game has only one difficulty, and you experience the game as it is. After you complete the game, you unlock a mode which is called New York Time, in which you have to complete the game in a certain amount of time, otherwise you will die. And also, you unlock a new difficulty. The difference is that the enemies are more powerful now, which is not quite a bad thing, considering the fact that the game is already challenging. It tests your knowledge of the game and your style of gameplay. The last difficulty is unlocked after you complete the second difficulty, which is again much harder than the previous ones. The only satisfying reward is that after you complete the game on the highest difficulty, there is a secret level set in a high-tech room where you beat enemies in bullet time, and if you beat them, you unlock a new room, which is a nice Easter egg for the developers and for the studio that made the game. Those difficulties are a nice touch for an extra challenge, but somehow it's a little annoying. I mean, I think it is okay, but to me the game is as perfect as it is, having just a story that you are exploring, and then if you want you can choose to play it again on a higher difficulty. I get it why they did this difficulty unlocking, and I appreciated how they did it, but in order to enjoy those difficulties, take your time from the game, take a break, and come back later to the game, otherwise you will get burned and you will get frustrated with the game and probably you will rage quit. Yeah, I think it is better to do that. I wish I knew that when I played for the first time though. I'm not gonna talk about the themes and ideas from the game because it's very obvious that it's a story about vengeance. It is specific to the genre after all. 2001 was an incredible year. Back then a lot of series were released and evolved. And Max Payne was one of those series that appeared and changed the map of video game storytelling. Even though it made the story as simple as possible, the impact was powerful. The gameplay helped to make it recognizable over the years and the soundtrack made it unforgettable. And, as a pop culture fan, you can find that there are some nice nods, Easter eggs and references to movies like Godfather and Casablanca, or series like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There are small details that add this unforgettable stamp on the game, but for the time when the game was released, they did a tremendous job and gave you a reason to talk about Max Payne and to enjoy the game more. Becoming a cult classic and creating the possibility for 2 sequels and a movie, Max Payne is one of those titles that you are coming back to just for relaxation. It is a nice experience to take some steam off or to experience a good story. You know, being a short game which takes like 7 to 8 hours, the game is a nice experience. It has action, it has a nice concept, it has a lot. Probably you don't want to play the game because of the graphics or the mechanics that are somehow glitchy, but if you give it a try, it may be a possibility to like it. Max Payne is one of those titles that will reach your heart somehow. It's a game that will stick in your mind and maybe you will want to replay it, to go back to him and have some fun. It has a certain satisfaction for the player and makes you want to say, now that's a good game.